Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my podcast. My name is Lynette. Today, we're going to talk about a subject. It's always darkest before the dawn. I happened to be watching The View the other day, and they did a segment on a young girl that was bitten by a shark. I hate to bring negativity to this podcast, but she ended up losing a limb and some fingers. So it was real interesting. I don't like to watch bad news, so I started doing work on my computer. But what I did hear them say is that she is now running for homecoming queen at her high school. She also added that if it wasn't for this happening to her, she probably wouldn't be running for homecoming queen. And that brought to mind kind of a universal subject. I know I've shared with you my own trials. However, I've always said that this tragedy or illness that I've gone through in some form has made me a much better person. And when this girl said this, I thought, oh my gosh, it's kind of a universal thing that happens. And that's why in the earlier episode, I said there will be change, there's no doubt, but it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. Although physically, outwardly, you may look different when things happen to you. However, internally, it does adjustments that make you even better. I think without going through things in your life, you end up becoming kind of a silhouette of the way you were raised, the people you hung around with, trying to please certain people. And so you're not really your own person. But when tragedy looks you in the face, it somehow gives you this freedom to become the person that you were meant to be. Another similar situation, and I happen to see this on The View as well. It was a news reporter, a young woman, when she was getting ready to do her news report, somebody threw an apple at her head and it caused a head concussion. Well, that caused her to reevaluate her life, and she realized that she was spending far too much time with her career and kind of neglecting her children and her spouse. So she made adjustments. I'm not sure if she totally quit her job or not, but she made adjustments, and now she spends more time with her family, and she's happy. So what I'm getting at today is, metaphorically, let's not have to be hit in the head with an apple. Let's be willing to make these adjustments and these changes without going through any trials. There's something that happens to you when you go through a crisis or a tragedy. I think you more or less shed your ego. I think you realize there's nothing to lose. You don't have to impress anybody anymore because you couldn't if you wanted to. And there's a lot of freedom to that. And when you get that freedom, then you can decide who you want to be, what you want to be, and go the direction you would like to go, have always wanted to go. I mentioned to you in the last episode that the reason I wanted to take the job in banquet and catering is because I wanted a desk with a nameplate. And oh my gosh, how impressive that would be. And that is absolutely the wrong reason to make a change. But also, it goes full circle back to keeping your priorities straight. God, yourself, your family, and then everyone else. I know it's very easy to be distracted, to go to the left or the right, and wonder if you're making the right decision. But somehow, if you have faith, you will be guided and you will somehow land on your feet. How significantly different my life would be if I had done some of the things that I wanted to do. But I'm grateful that I was directed back on the path that I'm on now. The lady in New York that was hit in the head with an apple, she had made a comment how tragedy lines you up with, and I can't remember the word she used, but it was something to the effect of tragedy runs parallel with staying in the right direction. Don't need tragedy. And there's some people, they just somehow make the right decisions. And again, it goes back to when I told you certain people are so familiar with drama that they tend to make the wrong decisions. And then when they want to turn their life around, it is quite an adjustment. And sometimes it does take being hit over the head. But then there's those people that just seem to relax and make the choice that is beneficial to them, not trying to impress anybody. So without any disasters, any tragedies, let's be open to change. Let's be open to making those adjustments. In fact, I would recommend that you pray for the direction that you're supposed to go, that you're supposed to be. And don't do it for anybody else. Do it for yourself. Do it for God. But stay focused on what you want. Keep your priorities straight. God, yourself, your family, and then everyone else. And your life will fall into place. In fact, next episode, I wanted to talk to you about this similar situation, only where it applies to people in your life. And we'll go over that next week. In the meantime, no matter what you're going through, if you've already gone through a lot, like I've said before, get excited about the change. It does not necessarily have to be bad. It can make internal changes that are beyond the outward physical changes. Unfortunately, sometimes certain tragedies create physical changes, but nobody can take away what changes in your heart, in your mind, in your soul, in your spirit. And if you're simply seeking direction and you haven't had a bad diagnosis or some form of tragedy, reevaluate, are your priorities straight? Why are you doing something? Why do you want a specific thing? Is it for you? Is it for the betterment of you, for your family? Or are you doing it to impress? Start making moves for the right purpose, the right direction, and you will find your life will unfold and the stress will start to diminish. Let's try to make these changes and be the best that we can be before we are metaphorically hit in the head with an apple. This young girl that was bitten by a shark, I gotta say, I'm totally impressed by her. Some people would consider their life to be over, but what it did with her, it seems she was talking about her future and how exciting that is to go through so much. Even the experience, I'm sure, was far beyond traumatic, and still be very excited about your future and to be bold enough to know that she has the ability to become the chosen queen at her school. It doesn't matter what she's gone through. It doesn't matter what happened to her physically, that she feels confident within herself. In fact, she probably even feels more confident than she did before this happened. Also, I was watching a show where this young girl started bleeding within her eyes. Her eyes were discharging blood, and she ultimately went blind. And the person interviewing her said, "How do you feel? What does this mean to you?" She said, again, I can't remember exactly how she worded it, but I'll use my own words. She said, I feel free. I feel a freedom. In other words, it takes away having to impress anyone else, because you can't. It takes away that ego. It takes away that pressure to be something or somebody for somebody else. You end up focusing on what's important, and you are important. You are top priority. So again, these are some examples of what it's taken for some of these people to make changes, and myself included. If I hadn't gotten sick, I probably would have continued going like I was going. It takes internal changes to be absolutely happy, to be free, but be willing to make the change anyway, as if you were hit in the head with an apple. You do it for God, move forward, keep your priorities straight. The reason I entitled this, It's Always Darkest Before the Dawn, is because sometimes when tragedy hits us, it is our darkest moment. But then again, it can end up transforming you into a person that you never thought you would become. Until next week, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.